Are you a beginner and wanting to start a YouTube automation channel? In this video, I'm going to show you how I made over almost $1 million through a YouTube automation channel where it didn't require me to show my face on camera or make any videos at all.
Take notes because today we're going to teach you how to build your own profitable YouTube automation channel.
Okay, so we're in the first episode of the YouTube, or it's technically Automate Channels podcast is what we're gonna call it, but it's mainly centered upon creating a YouTube automation channel or leveraging AI as a content creator. So not just, YouTube automation people or faceless content creators, but if you do have a personality channel, we're gonna teach you how to leverage AI and all this other stuff. But in this specific video, I wanted to really focus in on the beginner tips for someone who's building specifically a faceless YouTube automation channel. And what I wanted to pop on the screen real quick is how I made almost $1 million from a YouTube automation faceless channel. And we're gonna get into what that means. And this is only took me 4 hours to do. So the coolest thing is it only took me 4 hours a week, and I didn't have to show my face on camera or make any of the videos myself. And so let's get into kind of what is YouTube automation.
Yeah.
So there is a video I want to play so I can show everyone here what a YouTube automation video looks like, and then we'll get into details of how it works and breaks it down.
Once upon a time, Tom Holland was best known for starring in the stage version of Billy Elliot in the 2012 disaster flick The Impossible. Of course, that all changed when the British actor appeared in Captain America: Civil War, donning the iconic Spider-Man suit to fight against Steve Rogers.
So as you saw in that video, pretty much there is no face. I mean, yes, there's face of Tom Holland, let's say, who's the background, but the narrator doesn't have a face. So the person doing the voice talent isn't showing his face on camera at all. And what's crazy is this channel that uploaded the video is called Looper. So Looper, I forgot how many subscribers they have now, but I think it's over 5 million or something. They've been doing this the longest pretty much. And all of their videos are faceless videos where they outsource to narrators online to do the entire video for them. Okay. And by outsource for, people as beginners, hired someone for very cheap. And so I wanted to break down on screen real quick the breakdown of what it took to make that video, so everyone can be on the same page and understand a little bit better of what a YouTube faceless channel is. So this right here is the video team. I call it's almost like an assembly line of people. You got a script writer. So you would go to places like Upwork.com or Fiverr.com, which is freelance websites, and you would go and try to find a script writer. Nowadays, there's a tool called ChatGPT, which is an AI tool, and we'll get into that in the next episode, so stay tuned on how to leverage ChatGPT. But ChatGPT is an AI tool that allows you to pretty much write the script for you, but it still requires a little bit of a human currently to add on and fix it up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But originally, a scriptwriter would cost me $40 to get done. Today, because of ChatGPT and the AI tools coming out, now that cost is down to $10.
It's cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah,
every day.
It will just keep getting cheaper.
Yeah.
So once you got a scriptwriter, then you got to get a narrator, a voice talent, right? Pretty much the person that was talking on that video we showed off. And that would be about $15, okay? It depends on the niche, it depends on the length of video, but the average is about $15 or so for, let's say, a 10-minute video or so.
Okay.
Then you got to get a video editor for about $20, okay? And then that video, then after the video editor, you would need to get a manager. And typically a manager at the very beginning for people who don't have money, it'll be you. You'll be the manager. The manager is pretty much almost a thumbnail artist in one, someone who oversees that team and manages the day-to-day operations.
Operates the channel,
pretty much. If you end up having money and the channel's producing money, a manager can usually be a 20% of the profit revenue share that you give over to them in exchange for them to do that work for you.
Okay, for sure. Is this the pricing that you kind of recommend to people who are just initially
Beginners.
starting? Okay.
Yes, beginners.
And how would you say these prices kind of fluctuate as you grow your YouTube automation channel?
Yeah, so as you get bigger and bigger, your quality should increase.
Of course.
I always talk about in reinvesting. Most people, they make 10 grand, let's say, from a YouTube automation channel. And then immediately they're like, yeah, let's go spend it on a nice car, right? Or let's go spend it on a new apartment. Right. And that's where you go wrong. The best move is to immediately reinvest all the money besides your bills. Let's say $3K a month, which is the average person's bills. You take $3, $4K a month. You got $6K, let's say, off that $10K.
Yeah.
Reinvest it into your channel for 3 more months of videos to make it higher quality, because the higher quality the video, the more it performs over time, right? And so that's what I would do as a move.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense for sure.
All right, so now the question is, all right, so that's how you hire people. You can find, ways out there. Now, make sure you guys subscribe, by the way, to this channel, because we'll go more in detail on other episodes on how to hire people and the mindset of hiring people. But we're giving you the beginner broad idea so you guys can get a better idea of the process that goes into a YouTube automation channel. Now let's talk about, okay, let's say you have a team. Well, how do you organize that team and how do you manage that team? So one tool I really recommend is called Trello. Great. It's very easy for beginners, and it's free unless you end up having 100 channels.
Yeah.
So I recommend you use Trello. I want to show you this one process we have on this next slide that we have. This process I call the video assembly line. Now, the video assembly line is a process that I created with a couple other YouTube friends way back in the day. Back in the day, this was 2016 or so. 2016, when my friends and I were doing this for the first time, and again, there's only like 20 channels that were ever doing YouTube automation when I was doing it. So we didn't have much to look at.
Yeah.
We didn't have some guru.
Not a model.
We
for
didn't
sure.
have a course,
Yeah.
right? We had to figure it out as we went. And so what ended up happening is I noticed my friends, okay, they were organizing all of their team through Google Sheets.
Oh, geez.
And for me, like Google spreadsheets, I can't handle it unless you're a nerd and you love all those little nitty gritty details. The average person can't handle Google Sheets, right? So I found Trello, and Trello is a tool that makes things so simple to manage projects. And so what I did is I went ahead and created different sections on the Trello board, and you guys can just copy what I have on the screen. But pretty much it starts with one section, which is the brainstorming section.
Yeah.
This section is where we come up with a bunch of video ideas, okay? Then once we figure out, okay, this is a good title, this is a good video idea, we move it to ready to script. That's when we hit up the script writer. Hey, check the Trello board. We got a script. This is the video idea. I need you to write a whole thing about it. Your script writer, if they're good at what they do, they'll know how to write a script just based off a title. Most people think that you need to give your script writer a bunch of bullet points. You don't. Just give them the title. They'll write about it, right? Then it gets moved over to in progress. So obviously that's them working on it. Moves over to ready to review. So that's when they tag me, hey, a script is finished. Can you review it? I look at it, give them some revisions, fixing up.
Yep.
Move it over to ready to narrate. That cycle continues on the review process. Moving to editor, moving to then uploading the video. Of
course, yep.
Now, what I didn't cover in the middle of this process is the thumbnail design, because as I said, typically the manager, the owner of the channel, will be doing the thumbnail in the process of this moving along.
Right. I think the most interesting thing about this is, like you said, like you came up with this, what, 3, 5, 6 years ago with your team? Just like Trello in general, just like understanding the video assembly line and like the operations that you should be running your quality control through in a sense. What's interesting to me is even now with all my clients, I still use Trello on a day-to-day basis to manage all of my workflow. So even beginners and people who have been doing this full time for years, I think Trello is a good thing to even manage just like small projects that you're working on with your clients.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so now let's start talking about why you need to pick a niche on YouTube. And in my opinion, this is probably one of the biggest struggles in the YouTube automation space and just YouTube in general, is picking a niche and understanding why your content is going to perform or why not. And this is kind of like the blockade that I always use is like, can your niche even pull views, right? And as we'll get into here, kind of like the main rules of thumbs that you need to look at when picking a niche or choosing a niche for your automated channel.
So pretty much when it comes down to picking a niche, what we really recommend for people is you got to understand the process between picking a niche. It's kind of simple, but it's hard when you actually execute on it. I think it kind of goes past everyone's head.
For sure.
Most people, when they pick a niche, I'm assuming, and I have a question for you in a bit. I'm assuming most people who pick a niche, from my experience, it's like, oh, well, I'm into this, so I'm thinking about making these videos. And what I always tell people is like, okay, you may be into it, but how big of an audience happens to be into the exact same detail and way of doing it? Here's a perfect example. A lot of people can be into gaming, right? But this one individual, you, let's say the viewer watching this, let's say you're into gaming and you know this one video game you love. But let's say that video game only gets 1,000 views. Only 1,000 people are into that video game. What's the chances of you getting to 1 million views and actually making a full-time living with it?
0, right.
Exactly. So kind of break down this graph here. What is the process and the secret way to find a viral good niche?
For sure. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but like if you just kind of take the main rules and combine them into one, I always look at it as kind of like a Venn diagram, which I'm sure we're showcasing up on screen for you guys right now. But here on the left side, you see like passion, like what you were just talking about. Like what do you enjoy doing? What do you enjoy viewing? Like what really is your passion? On the other side would be what is trending or like what is overperforming on YouTube right now that you see doesn't have a viewership cap. Like the example you gave would be like gaming. You were like, okay, my passion is gaming. Okay, so what in gaming is trending right now? Obviously, the example you gave, that game, specific game itself, was not trending, so that would not be a good niche to meet at. But if we could combine it with maybe just broad video games in general, right? So you can pick up on every trend from every video game, or maybe it's a specific game, Fortnite, that's trending at the moment. So I think there's kind of like the sweet spot in between of your passion and what's trending and working on YouTube, and just finding the combination and the sweet spot between that.
So let's talk about kind of sub-niching, okay? Because you can pick a niche, but the truth is that in itself is too broad early on.
Yes.
What we always talk about is going into a sub-niche, and then over time you can be more broad in your niche. So let's use the example of basketball, NBA, okay? let's say you're going into that niche. Typically, most people will do 10 craziest trick shots of the basketball world or something like that, or the NBA world, right? That's a title that people might immediately go into. The problem is 1 million people has done that, right? And the thing is, it's not very specific on one sub niche, because when you're a beginner, you kind of got to get off the ground. And typically what I talk about is like at the very beginning, search matters a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To get discovered initially. Once you get 5, 10,000 views or 10,000 subscribers, then you can go from a search strategy, right?
You're making a little bit more broad.
Yeah, and then you can go a little bit more broad, a little bit more out there. But early on, you got to sub niche and be very search specific. That means if people are searching for a certain thing in YouTube, you need to be the one serving that to the audience. So kind of break down, how do you find a sub niche?
For sure. I think we can use this example that we have here on screen, which is super interesting. It is the Rebound channel, I believe. Pretty old videos from the channel. Maybe it might not be Rebound. Anyways, the channel is obviously NBA based, kind of around moments. And every single video that I saw them post before these 8 videos was like NBA high IQ moments, NBA most disrespectful moments, NBA fan moments, right? Kind of these compilation based videos. But as you can see here, the videos that are highlighted green that actually overperformed were uber specific on individual NBA players in the league, right? So as you see James Harden, as you see LeBron, Michael Jordan, right? These are the things that are overperforming because they're about the individual creator. And I think what's important to take away from this is, like you were saying, you need to conquer your niche, or sorry, your sub niche before you move on to your broadened niche, right? Because when I'm making these NBA most embarrassing moments or these compilation based NBA videos, I'm appealing to a very, very broad NBA audience. But if I'm making a video specifically about LaMelo Ball, I'm catering to the LaMelo Ball audience. Which audience is bigger? The broad audience or the LaMelo Ball audience? Obviously LaMelo Ball, but it's more engaging, right? It's more specific. You have that sub niche of an actual individual within the NBA that you can target for your audience, right? And I think as you do this, you'll kind of pick up on like, and I don't even think we have to be this specific in a sense of like specific players within the league, right?
Well, real quick, on top of that though, real quick, the reason why I think it performed with specific players for this channel is because, again, it goes back to search.
Yeah,
People are searching for James Harden, or they're searching for Bryce James, which is LeBron James' son.
Right.
They're searching out that keyword to pop up. That's also why maybe they got so many views. If I had to look at their analytics, my guess would be at the very beginning, the majority of their views was coming from search, and then it moved into browse,
for
and then it
sure.
moved to suggested the bigger it got. That's what I would assume probably is going on where they started with search. And so a lot of what you need to be doing when you begin, guys, you need to be doing a sub niche and aim for search-based content at the very beginning. Okay, so there's some niches though, and some types of channels that you should not enter in. Why? Because YouTube doesn't like them, and they're most likely gonna demonetize you, which means you can't make any money from the videos. And so imagine the way YouTube works when it comes down to monetization is you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. Imagine you work so hard with so much great content, and you finally get to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours just to realize that YouTube says, we don't actually like your content and we don't approve of it to be monetized.
The worst.
That is the worst thing ever. Sometimes that can take 6 months to get to that point, right? Now, we have methods that we'll be reviewing over time that gets it in 1 month, but that's a side thing. But let's talk about how to avoid it since the beginning, right? Because people who's beginners, you guys wouldn't know this. So there is a big type of content style that people need to be aware of, and there's a lot of misinformation about YouTube automation going around town. Okay. I've been doing it the longest, so I know that what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear this.
So one thing that people don't understand, if you go to a channel called Sir Read It, this channel is pretty much doing Reddit like compilation videos, right? So they pop up a bunch of random Reddit threads. We'll have the editor probably play a quick clip in this. But pretty much it pops up a bunch of Reddit threads. And then what ends up happening is they have a robotic narration that plays or reads off of whatever is the quote on the Reddit post. What ends up happening is YouTube looks at that as, obviously it's not a human, and they look at it as like reuse / repetitive content, mainly repetitive content for that type of content style. And they hate that. YouTube wants creativity. You know, as much as people out there says, oh, all you have to do is download someone else's video and then upload it and I made money off of it, that's false advertisement. Like anyone who's saying that, run away. That guru doesn't know what he's talking about, right?
100%.
And so you have to understand that YouTube does want creativity. Now, can you use other people's clips without audio, by the way? I'm talking for the B-roll, the background. It goes back to the Tom Holland video we just showed off. If you look at that Tom Holland Spider-Man video, notice how there's a lot of B-roll, but the clips were constantly reorganized and playing different photos and clips throughout.
And zoomed in at specific spots.
And zoomed in, exactly. There was a lot of creativity added. And the audio was, for the most part, chopped off. So it was only a narration, a custom human narration. That's the keyword, human narration.
Yep.
too many of you are thinking that you can you can use AI or robotic voice. The truth is YouTube hates that stuff.
Literally
now,
can't.
maybe short term you might be able to get away with it, but long term you won't.
Yep.
And so you have to try to be as creative as humanly possible with your content.
What's interesting with this too, even a lot of people now are just switching to like shorts to like cater against this, right? Because you don't, or at least what I've seen is YouTube hasn't been like hitting as hard on these shorts channels. But what's interesting is I have a friend who pretty much all he does is run these like YouTube shorts pages that he automates completely with AI scripts, everything. But now when he went to apply for his 100K plaque, he did not get accepted because it was AI, completely AI generated. So I think there's just like only a certain extent that you can go or growth that you can succeed until YouTube really catches on and
was
understands.
the AI voice, was it obvious it was an AI voice?
Actually, no. It was, the kid's like 16 and it was just his voice, but low pitched. But it had that robot feel. And it was those clip compilations where you could see that also the compilation was clearly developed with AI.
Okay, so that goes back to it too. It's like, guys, you want to try to have a human voice,
Yep.
whether it be your voice or you partner. Well, this is what I did, guys. When I first started my YouTube channel and I didn't have any money, I partnered with a friend and I taught him how to video edit it, and I gave him a microphone. I said, you do the video and I'll give you 30%. And it worked. And then once I made some money, once I made some profit, then I hired professionals on
Exactly.
Upwork or Fiverr. All right, so you talk about some of the good channels. What does that look like in full detail? Can you name some of the channels as well so people
Yeah,
can check
for
them
sure.
out?
So when I think of a good automation channel, just like you said, what I would consider as a bad, think of the opposite as good, right? More personified, creative, and you actually are gaining something from the video in a sense is one of the big kind of, I guess, metrics that I look for. But yeah, so the biggest automated channel that I always think of would be Rebound, right? Initially just coming on is just like a great, very enthusiastic voiceover, a amazing clip packaging, right? They're still using clips from the NBA, but the editing that they're putting in, the editing and animations, let alone that they're putting on top of these edits, restricts them from any copyright issues. They add zooms, they add everything. They're catering towards the algorithm, obviously against the monetization methods, and just like finding a way to add creativity and personalization to something that typically wouldn't. But yeah, another channel example of this would be this Halo channel, and I think it's weird to think about, but the Halo channel itself feels like not very personable. Like when you watch it, it feels like a documentary style channel, which typically you'll run into those monetization issues on that because people are stealing clips or using AI generated narrations. But this channel specifically is like an 18-year-old kid that just narrates his videos. You can tell he's very enthusiastic. He's using stock footage. He's using like very surface level content to where you would typically be like, I'm a little iffy about this. But since he's having like this good research in his videos and he's having this creativity and stuff that you typically or literally possibly couldn't do with AI, his videos are still performing and he hasn't had any issues with
And it's still
demonetization.
monetized.
Yeah.
And one thing for you guys, there's this tool I recommend if you have Chrome. Go on the Chrome library, extension library, and search channel monetize or is channel monetized. There's a Chrome extension you can literally just get, and it will literally tell you when you go to a homepage of a channel, it'll tell you if they're monetized or not. Then you know what channel you can model after and what channel you can't model after. So that is an extra tip for you guys.
So now we're going to be talking about the key factors that go to a viral video, right? So there's obviously certain metrics that you need to look at in YouTube Studio to understand why your video is performing or why your video is not performing. And these two metrics are CTR and average viewer percentage.
Which is like AVP. So first off, CTR is click-through rate.
Yep.
And then AVP is what you'll hear us constantly say because it's easier to say than average view percentage.
Right.
So we use these like quick words. So if you're trying to figure out what these words are, these random letters, click-through rate and average view percentage. So let's talk about how these two key factors is what you want to focus in on with your videos.
Yeah, so first let's really understand what click-through rate is as itself, right? So click-through rate would be the amount of people that click on your video out of the amount of people that saw your video, right? So as you can see from this equation on screen right now, let's say we got 1,000 impressions on a video. Now let's say out of those 1,000 impressions, we got 100 views or 100 clicks on our video from those 1,000 impressions. Therefore, our CTR percentage would be 10%, right? And I think what's difficult with this is people always, with analytics in general on YouTube, they always fall into like a end-all be-all answer of what your CTR or like any individual metric should be. But for me at least, and I want to hear your opinion, but like what would you say your goal CTR is per video? Because me myself, definitely depends per niche, obviously, but also I think one thing that people overlook is the amount of impressions you're getting and views per video that you're getting actually affects your CTR tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuances that we should probably break into.
Yep.
When it comes down to a metric to look at, when it comes down to like certain numbers, right? So again, click-through rate and AVP does matter across the board, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the debate of what percentage of click-through rate or what percentage of AVP do you need to have a viral video, that's where it gets iffy because there's a lot of context and nuance that goes into it. And so the answer is the higher the better.
Of course.
But let's kind of break down some of the nuances that goes into real quick. Let's talk about click-through rate, some of the nuances that goes into that. Like what could cause it where, let's say, now you know this the best, let's say you have a 10% click-through rate within 24 hours of uploading video, but only 1,000 views is on that video, right? Because the 1,000 views is typically your audience initially, okay? Let's just say that. What happens if it starts going down, but your impressions, your views starts to go up? Like, what does that mean if your click-through rate keeps going lower and lower, but you keep getting more views, so it doesn't make sense, right? Because the higher the better. So why am I being rewarded for a lower CTR?
Right, yeah. So to me, initially, I mean, there could be a few different things that's weighing in on that, but the main thing would just be you're gaining more impressions. More people are seeing your video, so it's appealing to a much broader audience. Therefore, that out of that broader audience, possibly some of those people won't be your target audience, right? So therefore, your click-through rate's gonna lower just because they're not interested enough to click on the video because that's not typically the audience they wanna watch.
And the click-through rate is typically your thumbnail and title, just for people to be clarified. But yeah, so like what ends up happening is it gets sent to people that are like broader and broader. YouTube, what they do as an algorithm, YouTube is going to send your content out to a pool of people is what I always explain. Imagine it's a small group of people, right? And the group gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the more great information and feedback YouTube receives about your video from the first pool.
Correct.
So initially, let's say YouTube sends it out to 100 people, and out of the 100, 10 people click. That's 10% click-through rate, not too bad. And let's say, we're going to get into AVP in a second, but let's just say they watched all the way 50% of the video. That's a 50% AVP, right? Which means it's pretty decent metrics that you're receiving. But then they send it out to, let's say later down the road, 2,000 and then 10,000 and then 20,000 people. And now that number gets less and less and less, and it gets so bad to a point where now you got a 2% CTR and a 20% AVP. What ends up happening typically is YouTube will just shut it off altogether because they're no longer getting good feedback.
Get a flat line for sure. But yeah, I think it's easy to say click-through rate is the metric or one of the metrics that you need to focus on when trying to be successful on YouTube. But what's really hard to understand is how to actually optimize for a higher click-through rate, which is what we're going to roll into now.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are kind of the main rules of thumbs when I think about when making a thumbnail, right?
Oh my gosh, you just tried to do a pun there.
Banger, come on. So as you can see here is kind of a checklist of like I said, the rules that I look at when making a thumbnail. First being, thumbnail has to be action-based, right? And that's a big thing that I've been testing out with in 2022, I would say primarily, is just actions being in your thumbnail. Whether you're breaking something, whether you're catching something, whether you're anything, right? And that moves on to driving curiosity, which is the next step, right? And I think those kind of coincide, right? You can be doing an action that then leads the viewer to being curious about what the next action is based off that, right? So if you have a shark swimming behind you, the action is the shark swimming. The curiosity is the shark going to eat this dude, right? Going off of that, go ahead.
And I want to give an example for YouTube automation so it makes more sense. So it goes back to the NBA example. There's a lot of thumbnails that I know what they do is, for example, that we should pop up on screen to show an example of like a thumbnail. I'm certain we can find it. Where let's say there's an athlete player, right? And there's some scandal happening in the background photo of the athlete player that drives curiosity and even some action-based concept. And the recognizability part that you're about to break down of a checklist of what you should aim for with a thumbnail, the recognizable aspect is that specific athlete, right, face that's famous in the thumbnail.
Yeah, a big thing on that as well is kind of just like trends. Like I consider trends recognizable, right? If that's something that the general person could see, general person that is on social media frequently can see and like be like, wait, I've seen that before. That's recognizability, right? It can be a logo, it can be a face, it can be a color, it can be anything, right? But it's just something that is noticeable that almost, I think a good way to put it that I've never thought about is like almost makes you feel like home in a sense, like you relate to this. Off of that though, the biggest thing with thumbnails and like, I guess this is probably one of the things that people kind of focus on too much with thumbnails is just extremeness. Just like making sure everything within your thumbnail, and this kind of coincides with that driving curiosity, but like how can I make this one step more extreme. If I have a diamond chain in my thumbnail, why make it diamond? Let's make it ruby, right? If it's a gold chain, let's make it diamond, right? Just adding that extra emphasis of like, this video is crazy, right? Give that viewer a reason to click. And I think a big thing that we kind of forgot to hit the mark on here is, like we said, like the metrics that you want to be optimizing your videos for on YouTube to find success is thumbnails and titles. But the biggest thing that I think is overlooked is just kind of like the complementation, I guess the word would be, between the thumbnail and title and how that actually affects your CTR.
Right, so almost have the thumbnail and title work together. But also, that's another thing, work together but don't repeat.
Exactly.
So like most people, they'll do like a title, and then they'll say, let's say they'll have certain text in the title. They'll take the exact same title text and put it also as text in the thumbnail. I look at it as wasted space, wasted real estate. It's like you have an opportunity to add an extra word or two on the thumbnail that adds on to the whole context of the situation. Why repeat it? It's already there one time. You don't need to repeat it several times.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, other than that, you have that listicle format within the video that rolls into that kind of AVP, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But yeah, just looking at the thumbnail itself. First of all, colors are booming, right? Like it's sticking out hard to me. The red circle, the blue in the background, the white from, I guess I would kind of guess that's a note or a yearbook, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's kind of the recognizability in it would be that, first of all, red circle. Everybody's seen that red circle on YouTube before. Secondly, obviously LeBron James. Third would be that yearbook, like this feels personable. Everybody's seen this before, relatable to anybody who's ever been on YouTube, right? But what I think really hits the mark here is LeBron James being fat, right? That's one thing that when anybody in the world thinks of LeBron James, they think of a fit NBA player, one of the best athletes in the world, the most fit person in the world. If you have a fat picture of LeBron James, instantly I'm intrigued, right? So this is driving that curiosity. Was he actually fat? Is this what LeBron James looked like as a kid? Like what's going on here, right? And I think this appeals to a lot broader of an audience than just LeBron James fans, right? This is basketball in general, right? This is the GOAT, arguably, the GOAT of basketball in a thumbnail, right? It's enticing. What do I not know about LeBron? One of the most popular people on the planet.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add on to that thumbnail is if you guys notice, they used red on the shirt, and I'm pretty sure that was Photoshop. They Photoshopped red. They also probably Photoshopped the kid's face.
Yeah.
Which isn't actually LeBron, obviously, but they found some kid that looks close to
I'm not
LeBron.
gonna lie, too. I think that kid is from like a TV show or something.
Yeah, maybe. But so that's another thing people should know. This is Photoshop. Like I think that's another thing we should really stress. Like this isn't a real photo of LeBron James when he was younger. This is all Photoshop. So they went on Google Images and they tried to find old 80s yearbook photo. And they got this big collage, and then they took a segment of that collage, Photoshop that one middle photo of the kid, try to find some fat kid that looked close to LeBron if he was maybe younger, right? Put his face there. Then they Photoshopped that shirt that he's wearing. There's no way, I just don't think so, that natively that guy was probably wearing a red shirt that day, right?
No way.
So they found a random color thing to change to make it red.
Pop more,
Yeah, pop. And that's something that I think we should talk about is how you should never have a thumbnail that blends in too much. You need to have certain colors that stand out so there's not too much blending. If you have let's say you have a light blue, then you have a darker blue, and then you have a really dark blue, and that's all the colors you use in your photo for the most part, it blends in too much.
All mashes together.
And nothing will stand out. You guys need to be trying to create colors that pop. If there's a main key aspect of a photo, have it be red, green, yellow. Those are the main aspects, which we're going to show on the second display. So we should probably break that down on colors-wise for the second thumbnail here about strongest assets
Yeah, for
ever.
sure. So going on to the second one, the strongest assets ever. First thing, going back to the second thumbnail, just kind of base this off this, I'm wondering, how do you think that left thumbnail would have looked if that circle instead of red was yellow? To me, that would have been more enticing and popped even more, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, side topic anyways. But yeah, this second thumbnail, I really like. It's a little less recognizable, I can definitely say. I've never seen this guy before, not recognizable, but cartoonish, so I kind of feel at home, right? But first thing that pops to me and why I love these kind of like two-frame thumbnails so much is showing the compare and contrast, right? Like that's the biggest thing. When I look at this, automatically in the video, I'm expecting to see somebody stick their hands in acid and their arms get cut off, right? First of all, that hits the extremeness. That's hitting the compare and contrast. That's hitting the curiosity. Like, does this dude's arms really just get burnt off by acid in this video, right? So we're hitting all of those marks and it's popping.
The big thing though, the question for you though,
Yeah.
is more the colors, because I think the colors is
okay.
what I wanted to hit on here. Because the driving curiosity, I think people understand that now, but the colors is something we've not fully covered just yet.
Okay.
If you look at that thumbnail, the strongest acids ever. Again, what colors did I just go over? Yellow, red, green.
Yeah.
All of those colors they hit on. Why? Personally, for me, I think it's psychology wise because stoplights typically are those bright colors that make you stop. And so subconsciously, if you're a driver, I think you just learn to pay attention to those colors.
Yeah, they're just constantly bright and popping. What's interesting to me is, because like, wouldn't yellow and red, the contrast color of that be blue typically, or would it be green? Because that's kind of what I like to do sometimes with thumbnails as well, and it's kind of like a tip that I give to a lot of people is like, if I have yellow in my thumbnail, I'll literally pull up a color wheel, and I'm colorblind as well, so it helps me a lot. But
wait. So you manage? Okay, clear. I didn't know.
yeah.
So you manage big YouTubers' channels, and you're colorblind.
Yep. Somehow it's still worked, so we'll keep rolling. But I do have to use color wheels sometimes for sure and get second opinions, but it can always work. But yeah, to me, right, wouldn't the contrast color of yellow and green be blue? Or sorry, of yellow and red be blue rather than green? To me, this hits the believability factor of, okay, let's not use blue because acid's never blue. Acid's always green, right? So we need to stick with that believability because contrast doesn't go that far, right? And I think that's a big thing that people kind of dive into with like thumbnail strategy in a whole is like everything's color theory when it's just truly not.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some bad examples of thumbnails.
For sure.
So kind of break down the video, money tips that'll make you rich #1.
First of all, Lil Bro with the cash, he looks cold. I can say that for sure. But the biggest thing to me is, I don't know, anything with investing, I just never understand why people are not adding that factor of not believability, but like recognizability within the thumbnail, but to build trust,
First,
right?
let's remember we got some podcast listeners.
Yeah.
So let's try to give them almost a visual idea of what they're looking at. You know what I mean? So what's happening is there's a photo where the thumbnail is this kid putting his thumbs up with money out, right? This kid is not recognizable. No one knows who he is. It says, get rich tips, #001. And then it's, a guy, I'm assuming the commentator on the right side.
Yeah, maybe.
Like his photo, maybe.
Yeah, that wasn't on all his thumbnails, so maybe not.
I don't even know. So like this mainly goes down to, there's two aspects real quick I want to hit on. First, let's talk about the title.
Yeah.
Money tips that'll make you rich #1. That's too vague.
Way.
Goes back to sub-niching. This person only got 13 views on this video, which means they're not an established channel, which means they don't have any excuse for doing such a broad idea. So in my opinion, because they didn't sub-niche, that messed them up. Maybe an idea would be 10 ways to spend your money good, or 10 ways to get rich as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, or
in
in
your
2023.
Yeah,
right?
or in 2023. That's more specific. That's a sub-niche, right? In your 20s or something like that. The second thing is, let's break down the thumbnail. The thumbnail and everything, again, recognizability is not there. No one there is famous. Second thing, text. Again, what did we talk about? It's repeating the title. Get rich tips.
I didn't even realize
Tips
that.
and rich are
Oh,
already
wow.
in the title. So like, why are we repeating it?
Yeah, and I think this is a big thing as well, because to me, this guy's goal with this, because people always hear kind of like the 3 points of focus rule. Like in a thumbnail, you can only have 3 points of focus, right? And you hear that a lot, and although that is a good tip, it's not always the main thing that you need to focus on, right? Because as of here, he has 3 points of focus, but this is still not a great thumbnail at all, as you can see from the performance, right? And I don't think it's just the color theory, and I don't think it's just the reputability, but it's just a combination of all things lacking, right? We have so much white space in the thumbnail that could have been utilized to show something at least, right? And let alone like the face cam on the right side, just not clean. Nothing's really there that's like selling me this video in any sense. And one kind of thing that I like to do when strategizing thumbnails, and like once I get my final thumbnail for a video, is I'll show it to like one of my friends, right? I'll show it to Caleb. I'll be like, bro, look at this thumbnail. From the thumbnail, without the title, what do you think the title of this video would be?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a big thing. I think here you can kind of understand because he literally puts the title in the thumbnail. But from a general understanding, you need to kind of like sell a story from a picture, right?
Yeah. Let's real quick go over how average viewer percentage works, which is the second key virality aspect to a video. So you kind of break this down for everyone.
Yeah, so for sure. We have another equation here on the screen, not meaning to confuse you guys. I'm not good at math either.
This is a math class, in case you guys didn't know.
Please no, I would not be here. So on the left side, you can see this is the runtime of the video. Runtime meaning like how long is your video that you just posted on YouTube, right? So in this example, the runtime would be 10 minutes long. Now, the watch time, which would be like, so if I'm a viewer of this video, I click on the video, how long of the video do I actually watch? When do I click off, right? The example here would be 5 minutes. So divide the two, your average view percentage would be 50%, right?
Because if you got a 10-minute long video and people only watch an average of
Half.
5 minutes, 50% AVP percentage. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think one thing that we kind of need to dive in here as well, just like CTR, is kind of the misinterpretation with the key metric that you're aiming for, or the number you're aiming for to have a successful video average view
Let's just
percentage
say real
wise.
quick, what is the percentage you would say for AVP? What is a percentage where you'd be like, this is pretty good?
It just really depends per channel and per niche, right? Because I run some reaction and like larger scale channels where it's like we're hitting 60 to 65, 70% per video. So if I got a 50% on a channel like that, yeah, the video flopped, right? But if I have a channel where it's like, okay, this is a bit of a younger audience, this is kind of compilation based, this is an uninteresting topic to the average person, then I'm going to be expecting like a 40 to 50% average viewer or average viewer percentage. Sorry. So I think it really depends per niche, just like we said with CTR. But I think if you're getting anywhere from 50% plus, then you're
Really
at a
good.
good level. Yeah.
Okay. So what happens though? If you got more views, that percentage just would likely go down just naturally.
For sure, yeah.
So just because if you guys get 1 million views, if you're getting more impressions and it goes down from 50% to 45%, it's okay. But at what point do you think it's actually a problem where, like, let's say it's a 50% on average, it got there with 500,000 views, but then it's starting to drop heavily down to 35% AVP. Have you seen it maintain and still get growth long term?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just difficult,
It's a
right?
case by case, right?
Yeah,
But
for-
like on the top of the head, if you had to guess what's going to happen, because here I'll add my point and then
Yeah.
you can add it. What I've seen is if your CTR is
That's what I was gonna
overly
say.
performing, so your CTR percentage, guys, is let's say usually 17% plus. If it's 17% plus, your AVP, your average viewer percentage, can be less. It can be 30% sometimes. Doesn't mean it's good. You
Right.
still got to work on it. Still got to figure out how to make your videos better going forward. But the video can still probably perform right at a high level,
Or at least
because-
continue getting pushed.
Exactly, because the click-through rate is so high.
Right.
But here's where it goes wrong. From my experience, what I've learned is that it's typically short-lived. So if your CTR is so high, but your AVP for too long is so low, it's good short-term, but long-term, I haven't seen it maintain a lot of growth.
Oh yeah, agreed, for sure. I think the biggest thing on this is just kind of like correlation between metrics, right? Because we're saying like the biggest two metrics to look at would be average viewer percentage or AVP and CTR, right? But it's like, even if I have a crazy high CTR or a crazy high average view percentage, and the other metric is at the bottom, or 0%, 5%, 10%, whatever, then the video is not going to perform, right? You kind of need to cater to all metrics at once, which is the difficulty of YouTube, right? But I think there's also a lot of metrics that kind of weigh into it, right? Because it's like, what about my average view duration? If I'm pulling a 50% average viewer percentage, how is my average view duration holding for this runtime, right? So I think there's different metrics.
And that's
that
a little
weigh
more
in.
advanced.
Yeah, definitely.
that's a little too advanced.
My
We'll get
bad.
into that in future episodes. Subscribe, guys, so you guys will see those episodes. There's a lot to YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
We're just trying to make it as dumbified as we can.
But yeah, I think there's still kind of some main rules of thumb when optimizing for a good average viewer percentage, which we have on the screen here for you guys, which would be one, formatting. And I kind of want you to dive in here if you ever hear one that you're like, maybe, or adding one. One, formatting. Two, information tension, which by this, I mean like, how much information am I getting at certain points, right? Is it bite-sized pieces? Am I giving you the full package right away?
Let's
Et
break
cetera.
down each one on this checklist, though, because
Yeah.
I feel like it's better if we really focus in. So formatting, right, is one of the checklists to making a video good.
Yeah.
What does formatting mean? Let's give someone an example.
Yeah, when I think of formatting, I think of, let me just give you an example, right? So if I'm going to watch a video, how is this video actually set up, right? Is it, I come in, intro, information bit, then a 4-step process on how you're actually gonna do this video? Or is it, I come in, 4-step process, then information, then payoff, right? It's just how you're actually segmenting your video for the viewer to interpret, right? And the biggest thing on this, and what I love is like when I actually get a video back, like of just straight raw footage, actually going through the raw footage with the editor and like, hey, let's put together 5 different videos out of this one video just by switching the format, right?
Yeah, and then the next thing on the checklist would be information tension. So pretty much what this means, and the way I look at it is, I give the metaphor of never give the whole cake immediately,
Yep.
give a small piece of the cake throughout the video. So let's give the example of a random title. Let's say you know, this scandal Kim Kardashian has, it will never be forgotten, or something like that, some random title like that.
Okay.
Obviously, we gotta work on that title, guys.
Right.
But let's just say that's the title, right? Something about Kim Kardashian and some scandal behind her. Okay. Obviously, think about it from the viewer standpoint, okay? YouTube is all about, guys, if there's anything you can learn from this, YouTube is all about psychology and trying to predict / provide what the viewer wants to watch,
Yes,
okay?
100%.
So let's look at it from that title lens about Kim Kardashian. I'm obviously looking at that title about scandal that Kim Kardashian is involved in. Okay, what is the scandal? That's the question in my head. Of
course.
And let me learn about this. So I'm gonna click on the video. If in the very beginning of the video, let's say within the first minute, is there something wrong? Oh, what? Okay. Within the first video, let's say within the first minute of the video, okay? What ended up happening is I literally just tell them immediately, let's say it's a 10-minute video, but in the first minute I say, so anyways, guys, the scandal that Kim Kardashian was involved in was like this one thing with her car and the dealership. Didn't end up so well. So anyways, that's pretty much like what happened there. But one thing I want to talk about, guys, is about how crazy Kim Kardashian's new apparel is. Like that's going to lose everybody within 1 minute. Because
Instantly.
within 1 minute, you gave them what they already were clicking on for, right? So here's the secret. Instead, I would start the video off saying, you won't believe this crazy scandal Kim Kardashian is involved with, but first we got to take it back to the beginning so you can fully understand the context.
Boom.
Now
Now
I'm
you're
giving them
hooked.
a small piece of the cake, and I tell them the leading facts, the leading history leading up to that big scandal. So give them a piece of a cake. Don't give them nothing, because then they'll be pissed off. They're like, oh, clickbait.
They won't stay,
They'll
yeah.
click off. Give them a piece of the cake. Give them a little bit of reward about the context, right? Okay, that's the first minute. Second minute, another piece, another piece. Every minute needs to be a piece, a hook. You got to be doing several hooks throughout the video. Remember, at any time, you got to buy the viewer. They're going to be thinking about clicking off. Buy them, hook them back in. Then 8 minutes or 9 minutes out of that 10-minute video,
Yeah.
you finally reveal what the thumbnail is all about. You
Pay off
finally,
the video.
payoff, you give them everything right there. The final
Exactly.
piece, instead of giving them one piece of the cake, you give them the two. And then that's how you end the video off.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that you said there, and what everybody needs to kind of take from this, is those re-engagement points. Like you said, like there needs to be multiple hooks throughout your video, right? And that's the biggest thing that people run into is like, if I'm making an information-based video, and this is like majority of my consulting calls, it's just getting people to understand how to format your videos and when to give certain information, right? So it's like, if I'm doing just an information-based video, how do I make this more interesting to just teach you, right? Because I think of it as like, I never liked school, right? When I'm sitting in a classroom and teacher's talking to me, I'm not listening. I'm completely zoned out, right? So how am I going to watch something and still be interested by learning, right? And I think it's not the classroom environment that's hindering that, right? So it's like, okay, we need to make this more interesting. How do we do that, right? So like you said, we have that enticing hook. We tease some sort of information towards the end, which is kind of the next step. Otherwise, we have those points where it's like, okay, we're moving on to step one, right? Then when you get to step one, boom, whatever, step one is this, blah, 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 blah. But you guys can't wait till you see step two. It's even crazier, right? So there's your kind of like re-entry point of where you're going to hook them for the next tip, right? Because there needs to be, you can't just have one hook at the beginning of your video and expect your graph to be straight and hold throughout, right? You need to have those points of re-engaging to really like understand how this is going to work, right? And what you'll see after time is like, those are the points that you're getting the biggest spikes in your video. Is touching back on that B story or through line or whatever.
And by the
it
way,
is.
that's one of the checklists is a hook, by
Exactly.
the way. So you know, formatting, information, tension, cake is pretty much what I remember it as, and then enticing hook. So we kind of went over that. Let's talk about the next thing, foreshadowing.
Yeah,
Let's break
I think
that
this kind of goes hand in hand with information tension as well. So like everybody knows what foreshadowing is in movies, etc., whatever. It's something that you're teasing at the beginning of the movie that's eventually going to be paid off
So
on later.
maybe we should give them an example though, because not everyone's in the film world like us. So
Right.
foreshadowing, all right, you know how people, when you watch a movie, how they show you a scene and it's intense. You're like, wow, the movie just began. Why am I in the middle of an action
Yeah, like,
moment?
why are they
when
fighting?
A guy's about to die. Like, why did the movie start this way? What is happening? And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, it says 5 years earlier.
Boom.
That's the foreshadowing hook. And then they go into the beginning and work your way back up to that moment where you started the movie with.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways that you can do this in media and YouTube in general, but the biggest thing for me is just setting stakes. So like when I say foreshadowing, I kind of mean that hand in hand with stakes, right? And it's a bit more difficult to do in the automation space when it's not on a specific topic of a video, right? But when you're kind of like an IRL creator, like let's give an example of like Preston, right? We both worked with Preston. So like, for example, if one of his videos is delivering 100 mystery boxes in 24 hours, right? at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be like, hey, if I can deliver all of these mystery boxes within 24 hours, then I'm going to break my Tesla. Boom, there's your foreshadowing. There's those stakes that are set that gives that viewer a reason to continue watching until the end, right? And that's where it goes with that formatting and information tension, where you're hitting those re-engagement points of like, oh my gosh, we just got 50 mystery boxes delivered. Like, I can't imagine if we're gonna be able to do 50 more, right?
So now let's talk about kind of ways you can monetize your YouTube channel. There's many ways you can do it. And let's just go through some of the summary. We're not gonna be able to go specifically in this video in detail, but in future videos we will. So let's just talk about kind of a breakdown. This breakdown is from Patty Galloway, who did a really good example of how sometimes, again, these percentages that we're showing on the screen, 33% ad revenue, 20% merch, 8% Patreon, 12% affiliate marketing, 27% sponsors. This is not exact. This is just what you should aim for, right? So this is not an exact, you shouldn't look at this and be like, my money isn't like that. Mine is 90% ad revenue. It's okay. You can work your way into this over time.
For sure.
Let's kind of break down each one of these categories and what it means. Let's start with ad revenue, the most obvious one.
Yeah. Ad revenue, pretty self-explanatory. This is the money that you're getting paid for the ads that are running on your YouTube videos, right? So when you check the box on YouTube that your video will be monetized, this is the money that you're actually receiving from those videos from people viewing your video, right?
Okay, and then we got merch. So merch doesn't always work for YouTube automation channels. This is usually a little bit more, you have to be a personality for merch to work.
Yeah.
But it can work if you find a way. Some people have been smart about it. But merch is obviously a shirt or apparel, something that relates, that has your logo on it, relates to your community.
I would almost generalize this as just like product.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So merch could, yeah, you're right. So it could be like almost, an example being dropshipping store.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what dropshipping store, what it is you can sell a product without ever physically having the product, and you can sell it to a customer. That's another video we'll go into, but pretty much it's called AliExpress. You can do, if you just search Shopify dropshipping, you guys will learn about it. And what it means is I can buy a product from China for $8 and then secretly have a website where I can sell it for $30 where I make a massive profit.
Right.
And then I can advertise a 5-second little intro or whatever, a 5-second sponsor deal of my own product in my YouTube automation videos and push people to that website where I can make the profit.
Exactly.
So that is one method people can do. The next one is Patreon. So Patreon doesn't work for everyone, but if you want to make extra income stream, it works. I think Patreon works for the people who do massive production cost documentary videos.
Yeah.
If you do a massive documentary video that on average is an hour long and you need help funding it, a Patreon is perfect for it because you will get a massive fan base. And if you only release it every 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, people will gather around and help spend a few hundred here and there to help you fund that project.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy revenue coming for Patreon. It is, I will say, this is kind of hand in hand with merch. It is a bit more difficult to have like that big Patreon following as an automation creator or automation owner, right? But I think there's ways to go about it where you can still make things like this work if you're able to build kind of like that core fan base in a sense and you have like high returning viewers. I think Patreon's definitely something that you should at least try, right? Because it's not very high focus, right? Like it's not a lot of work and you're still getting that just from your viewership.
Yeah. And then the next thing is affiliate marketing, okay? So affiliate marketing is like commission links is what I call it. What it is a trackable links. Let's say you work with a product, and typically this is great for beginners because affiliate marketing will pretty much be your only venture you could go into besides ad revenue when you're a beginner. Because unless you have a big following, sponsorships, brand deals, they won't want to work with you. So affiliate marketing is where you have a trackable link and you get a percentage of all the sales that you direct to this specific product. So, 10% or whatever. So anyone who buys because they saw your video and they went to that link, you get some money off of it.
Exactly.
So affiliate marketing is great for beginners who doesn't have a following yet. And then let's go into sponsors. You can explain sponsors and everything.
Yeah, for sure. Sponsorships. So these are things that you're seeing put in videos, right? So if you've ever watched like a Mr. Beast video, and in the middle of the video, he randomly stops and names a mobile game, right? And he's like, go download it. These are those brands that are paying these creators and automation channels as well to integrate ads into their videos, and they're being paid for it, right? Usually you see it as like a 30 or 60-second integration. Sometimes it's just a link that you throw in the description, right? But this is actual brands or actual companies paying the individual creator to advertise their product or their brand.
Yeah, and sometimes the amount of money you can make varies because every niche is different. But
It's wild.
the general I've seen is about $25 to $30 every 1,000 views.
Yeah,
So
typically.
it's very, very high. Just for reference, ad revenue, how much you can make every 1,000 views directly from YouTube can sometimes only be $5 to $10 every 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So if you can get a brand deal, which again only happens when you have a bigger audience, but if you can get a brand deal, they will pay a lot of money for you, and that's something that you should aim for eventually.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, now we're going to roll into our Q&A segment of the podcast. So each week we're going to be doing a Q&A during the podcast, typically at the end, where you guys can actually submit questions for us to answer on the podcast, right? So make sure you guys go down below and comment some questions. These can be specific to your channel. These can be broad about YouTube, or even some personal ones if you want to get to know me and Caleb, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So we got a question here. I'm gonna have to kind of pre-context the question because it's a little bit worded weird. But this girl, she said, "Can it still work in saturated niches?" I'm assuming what she's saying is, can YouTube automation work in saturated niches? What that means is, like, if there's a saturated niche that I'm trying to enter into, is that a thing? And how do you stand out if it is saturated?
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult, right? The first thing that pops in my mind is Hoopflix. I don't know if you've seen that channel, right? But we've been referencing this Rebound channel, which is an NBA automated channel. But there was actually a new competitor that just launched that makes practically the exact same content. It's the exact same niche for sure, but the concepts are a little different, right? So I think the angle that you take on this is, you understand, and this is the biggest thing just on YouTube in general, people trying to get into YouTube, is like, if you're gonna make a YouTube channel, you need to stick out from your competitors, right? So if I'm going into a specific niche, whether it's populated or it's unpopulated, right? I'm gonna be scraping the content and understanding why it's working and just understanding the content in general. And then I watch it and I'm like, okay, how can I improve upon this, right? Because even if it's like those minor things or it's those micro details that are adding so much to the video, which is typically what it is with a channel like Rebound, it's the animations in the video that like drives the viewer. You just need to separate yourself from your competition, right? So although your packaging of your videos may be the exact same and may be in a very populated niche, the content inside your video should be very creative and very personable to your channel only, right? That's the only way you're going to succeed.
So in my opinion, the way I look at it though is that works on scale. But at the very beginning, I think it's tough because someone like a Rebound, if anyone watches Rebound, which I recommend you guys do because it's one of the bigger YouTube automation channels today, Rebound's channel is very, very well edited, and they have a giant team to make it work now, right? And they pay a lot of money per video. The average beginner won't be able to compete
at all. No.
But does that mean that they won't be able to grow? No. This is the way I look at it. The way you stand out is be the first one on a trend.
Yeah.
So think about it this way, guys. It's not about a niche. It's about the sub niche. So a sub niche can happen out of nowhere and then disappear later.
Right. Yeah.
So here's an example of a sub niche. Let's say you're an NBA, because we're already on that topic. That's been the whole niche we've been talking about. And let's say there's a new thing that goes in the news. LeBron James had a scandal with his wife. Okay, that's the news headline. Scandal with wife. All right, chances are that's going to last about 30 to 60 days before people move on.
Max.
But guess what? No videos exist.
Exactly.
No one's made any videos about it yet. What does that mean? People will definitely search for it and they'll want to watch it, and there's barely anyone making videos about it. So that means you can immediately go to the punchline, make the video before anyone else, and guess what? It'll actually be easier for you to make the video before anyone else. Why? Because you don't have a giant 5-7 person staff team like Rebound where it takes them 2 weeks to get the video out.
Yeah.
You can get it out by tomorrow if you work well with a small team. And then boom, you're the first one to it. Everyone will come to you by nature because you're the only one that is out there with it. So even if your video isn't the greatest, they will still have to watch it. And if they enjoy it, great. They subscribe, they're now a fan. And over time, you gather money in that way, where now you can invest into more long-term videos, more evergreen long-term videos that keep getting views. Like Rebound is a long-term evergreen channel. Then you can invest into that, right? And now you can stand out even in the evergreen world because now you, like you said, 20% better almost.
Right.
Make your video 20% better than Rebound because now you have the budget to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely the ideal situation. But what's your thoughts on going into a populated niche? Because a big thing that we kind of talk about is the outliers, like looking at outliers within a niche, right? And just like understanding what performs in your niche and basing it off that, right? Do you think it's possible to go into, well, obviously it's possible, but do you think it's very difficult to go into a populated niche, very populated, and still perform just by picking out those outliers off your top competitor channels and making them 10% better?
Yes, if you're making it 10% better.
not if
But
not.
remember, most people don't have $20,000, $30,000 to have higher production than someone who's been in the game so long where they have that budget.
Yeah, that's a good point. And especially when you're speaking about populated niches, you're gonna have those massive channels like Rebound that you just can't get better than.
You can get better, but
In
need
the
more money
in the production
Beginner
status, right?
Look, like I want to focus on beginners. I think that's most people, and I think that for beginners, that's how you stand out. So the answer is yes and no. Can you stand out, or can you go into a saturated niche? Yes, but you need the right strategy.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Right, you can't go into a saturated niche and expect to copy someone who's the top dog and have been the top dog for a while. No, you got to play a different game.
Yeah, you can't overtake them.
Yeah. All right, cool guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next podcast where we answer your questions and help you with YouTube.